I feel like if we don't stop making videos about this, the con organizers or the con chairs are just going to think it's okay to do what they did and they'll just try to fade into the background. And I'd rather that not happen. So we have a part 2 today because there's more to talk about Once Upon a Con. If you didn't see my first video, definitely go back and watch that. I'll have that linked here. If you could go back and watch the first one, you're going to get some more context that you need to understand, like what we're talking about here. Yes, today we have a part 2 about Once Upon a Con. There are more details to talk about. Today is August 29th. It's the day that they said they were going to pay authors back for the whole DeLoon situation, and obviously that has not occurred. Once Upon a Con occurred over the weekend of the 14th to the 17th, August 14th to the 17th, I should say, and it occurred in Washington, D.C., and today is August 29th, and it's a very significant day for authors because it's the day where they're expecting to get paid back. And so as I'm sitting here filming this, many authors are eagerly awaiting an email that will give them more information about when they're getting paid back, and hopefully that is today. Earlier this week, they received an email, and here's the email right here. Hey there, thank you for confirming. I've got your totals on the master list for author reimbursement. The board is discussing the best/fairest way to get everyone paid as soon as possible. Once that specific method has been decided, I will share it with all authors looking for reimbursement. I hope you enjoy your evening.
Once upon a con drama, just when you think it's done, you get another gift. Or in this case, an email. So I got this email today, and there's one sentence that I want to point out a few things in. And this email, I think, went out to all authors who were part of the DeLoon fiasco. So the board is discussing the best/fairest way to get everyone paid as soon as possible. Once that specific method has been decided, I will share it with all authors looking for reimbursement. Now, first of all, I want to point out the phrase looking for reimbursement. No, that's authors do reimbursement. We're not seeking something in the great wild. You owe us money, pay us money. We are not looking for it. We are due it. We are due money. Okay, other than that, the board is discussing the best/fairest way to get everyone paid as soon as possible. That says pretty clearly to me that the board does not currently have the funds possible to pay for the doubloons. Now, keep in mind that the doubloons are not a huge cost compared to the hotel rooms, the fees for the workshop, the fees for the cosplayers, all the other things that are still owed money. This email is saying that they do not currently have the funds to pay the authors out for the doubloons. And for people who are new to the drama, the doubloons where you turn in a little coin and it pays for a book from an author that was there. So authors are owed, some people are owed hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I'm lucky I am owed below 100, but some people are owed a lot of money, like a lot of money. So yeah, apparently they don't have the money and they're trying to pass it off as looking for reimbursement, not that we are due reimbursement. And that phrasing right there is very telling to me. It's very interesting. Looking for reimbursement? Honey, listen. Linda, listen. Everybody is looking for reimbursement. These are their books that they purchased themselves. They are out that money. Everybody, whether it's $18, whether it's $800, they're looking to get reimbursed. No one's just looking for reimbursement like they're out there in the wild saying, oh, I wonder where my reimbursement is. Yeah, everybody wants reimbursed and everybody needs to be reimbursed, and it must happen because that is what you said was going to happen and it hasn't happened. So they're out this money, and there's been literally radio silence on when they're going to get this back. So silly. Now let's talk about the VIPs and how they didn't receive what they thought they were going to get out of this event. According to the marketing and all of the emails and the Discord and everything they thought they were going to get, it ended up being
tiny compared to that, like what they actually ended up receiving. So let's go through that today because I learned much more about this. First, they were only originally supposed to receive one doubloon coin, and that's a coin that they could exchange in Author's Alley for a book. They ended up receiving two to make up for the fact that so many panels and events and workshops were actually canceled. General admission to the con was $125. Then, if you wanted to participate in any workshops or special events, you had to pay extra on top of that. Not even considering the hotel, wherever you're staying for the night. So it's a pretty pricey con when it comes to things. However, it's not completely out of bounds. Then they also had a general admission pre-sale that was $100. That one apparently sold out. VIP tickets were $200. So these attendees paid $75 more than general admission, give or take, or $100 more if someone got, the pre-sale. So there was significantly more money. They also have their refund policy on their website, and we're going to talk a lot about refunds today. So they do have a listing here. We're going to look at it together. The general admission versus the VIP admission and all the things that you get. So general admission, you obviously got access to all the event spaces. Okay, great. You should. Access to the marketplace the entire time it's open. Access to choose which Starfall masquerade you would like to attend. Access to all panels, to all workshops. Some of them require pre-registration and extra payments. Access to special events, etc. There was a BookTok burlesque that was canceled. Things like that. Access to the high fantasy fashion show that was free for everybody to attend, and it was also, they said, sold out. They were very excited about this one because also the con chairs were in this fashion show, so yeah, they made a big deal out of this one. Access to tabletop gaming room, war room. The war room was the war games were a complete shambles. We'll talk about that. Access to watch or participate in book-centered cosplay competition. Access to the cafe. We'll get into that. Opportunity to purchase specialty themed drinks at local bars and restaurants. Those were extremely expensive. Anyways, water was $9, guys. Water. VIP admission was a resort hotel, so that's what it is. But access to purchase very expensive wine for $17. Okay, what a deal. Then for VIP attendees, if you purchase the $200 ticket, you got access all of the all of the general admission perks, but you also get access to the Saturday Starfall masquerade, high fantasy fashion show, early access and shopping in the vendor hall, so you get to get there early. VIP formal dinner, VIP meet and greet and photos, access to private VIP lounge, special priority seating for events, and separate line for VIP attendees. This didn't happen as far as I know. None of these things happened. Book-themed VIP specialty swag box. So this swag box, the swag that they received was very lackluster. Private exclusive vendor shopping for items only available to VIPs. I don't believe that happened. Priority access to a reserved hotel block. So maybe they had that. So you can see how they were going to get special items, special access to the workshops, to the panels, special event seating. But most of these special things that were planned ended up being canceled anyways. So as a VIP attendee, you didn't get, your money's worth out of this event by any means. And they ended up giving an extra doubloon because they were trying to make up for the fact that they were missing all of these things that VIP members should have gotten. And they were missing these things because attendees were showing up at a con where for example, the cosplay judges couldn't afford to stay at the hotel. So they showed up, but they didn't get their hotel comped, so they left. So that means the whole cosplay, contest and all of that couldn't occur in the same way. So it was just kind of trash. The people that were supposed to be putting on, these events or panels, a lot of them couldn't afford to stay. So they were gone. And so that means those events and panels and, workshops couldn't happen. Also, what's really silly is the badges that delineated a VIP member from a normal general admission attendee. The only thing that the VIP members got special on their badges was a sticker. But the sticker was really cute. However, the sticker was actually donated. All the stickers, there were 500 stickers donated by a company called Starlit and Spellbound. And they were donated not to go on the VIP badges to mark someone as a VIP, but they were meant to be in the swag bags, right? So they donated specifically these stickers to go into the swag bags, and they ended up getting thrown on all the badges to mark the VIPs. So did they have any plan to delineate who was a VIP and who wasn't? Could anyone just find a sticker, put it on your badge, and say that you were a VIP? So then that extra $75 that you spent on that badge didn't matter because anyone could just be a VIP, I guess? That is all very silly to me. You need to have something unique on the badge, and you also need to be checking those. They were not checking those at any given moment to see if someone was VIP or someone was not, or if someone even was supposed to be at the con. No one was getting their badge checked at any moment at any of the events. So you could just wander right in. There was just no organization in that regard. So if you're going to sell VIP badges, you have to make sure that they get that VIP experience that they were promised. Otherwise, why even do that? Then don't even do that. It's a first-time con. Don't do the VIP add-on. I know you want more money, con chairs, but just do without the VIP. And what you get is not having to deal with that as much. So you don't have to deal with someone getting special things and another person not. Just don't do that if you can't figure it out. Don't. Next, there was a VIP banquet that was canceled. So that's one more thing that they didn't get. All of these things that were canceled. Let's talk about the doubloons. Go back to the doubloons. So they got 2 doubloons. Each VIP attendee got two doubloons. And there was estimated to be about 250 VIP tickets sold. So that means each VIP getting 2 doubloons, that's 500 potential spending coins out there in Author's Alley. 500 books given. We're going to say each book is about $20. That seems like a fair price. And some of them were more expensive and some of them were a little less. But let's just estimate on average about $20 a book. So that makes about $10,000 worth of books that authors were fronting in order to make the VIPs feel more special because they were, the event organizers couldn't figure out how to comp rooms. So they made the authors be the scapegoat. So that's why everybody is also I'm getting more and more worked up about the doubloons because they were trying to use the doubloons in a way to make up the money that they didn't have to pay rooms and to do all this stuff, and also to give the VIPs more, VIP stuff because they just didn't have the organization, nor the people, nor the manpower, nor the brain power, who knows, to figure out how to give the VIP experience. They used the authors as scapegoats in the situation to say, you know what, you're going to front the bill for this con, authors. That's about $10,000 that they got for free. $10,000 that they haven't paid back. So their excuse for not paying the doubloons now is saying that, Eventbrite or Tixter or whatever they're using, they're saying that they cannot get paid out until the 29th. Some people are saying that if you're a first-time ticket seller on Eventbrite on the platform, you can't get paid out or receive your funds until the 15th or the 29th. And the con was over on the 17th, so maybe that makes sense. So they can't get their money back until August 29th, which is today. But it's been radio silence today. I have not heard anything about authors getting their money back. And if I hear something while I'm editing this video, I'm going to pop it right here. Editing Heather here. It is now 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. I see that there was an update around 3 o'clock today. They mentioned that they will be paying back authors in chunks. They said a chunk of doubloon payouts go out today. There was a specific date given that these reimbursements would start, and that date is today. It's interesting that they said a chunk of them will be given out and not all of them. Obviously, they owe about $10,000, we're estimating. And so that's good that some of them will go out, but how are they determining who will get their payment first? I don't know what that means or how they're going to determine that, but at least a chunk of the payments will go out today. And there's been some mentioning that the con chairs are being harassed or something like that, and just wanted to be explicitly clear that I'm using any screenshots or information for this video that I'm creating on YouTube for purposes of fair use. I am using all of this in order to create commentary for entertainment purposes, and all of this is alleged. So just so you know, harassment isn't giving feedback about your event. When someone gives feedback about your event, that's not harassment. So we'll just put that line in the sand right there. So I just wanted to mention that if you're watching this and you're upset about this, don't be aggressive towards the con chairs at any moment. Don't be unfair. Don't be harassing them in any case. But you are allowed to air your grievances online, on social media. You're also allowed to reach out to them if you are directly involved with this situation. Don't feel like you can't do that for any reason. You have legal recourse to do so, and you may have a contract that states that you are obligated to receive your funds back from them. But yeah, I'm at least happy that we have some sort of notification that an email will go out today. Back to the video. Next, let's go back and just give more information on the rooms that weren't comped. Their excuse was that their card was bricked because the hotel or resort, the Gaylord, tried to book all 3 room blocks at once, and they specifically said 3, except they were only paying for 2 room blocks. The third block was actually the attendees who were all paying for their own rooms. So why did they say 3? They're lying, dude. They're lying. Also, your credit card will pay if you let them know ahead of time. If you're organizing a con and you're expecting to put a ton of money all at the same time on a card. I've worked in banking, I work in financial technology. I know what I'm talking about here. If you call your credit card company ahead of time, or if you're just prepared right there at the front desk, the person's running your card, you're going to call your credit card company and you're going to say, hey, you're seeing a big charge come through, but it is legitimate. It is me. It takes about 2 seconds. Okay. 15 minutes to make a phone call to your credit card company to say, in fact, that you are spending that money and you would like it to go through. Bricking, your card being bricked is not an excuse because it can be fixed very, very quickly. And I am someone, again, I know what I'm talking about. I work in financial technology. I've worked in the finance field for about 10 years. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this stuff. I know what to do in the situation. It's very easy, and hotels deal with this all the time. So if you're standing there and your card is bricked, they don't just go, oh, well, I guess we're done now. Everybody go home. No, they will say, hey, call your card company. It's probably because it's a large amount being charged all at once. And you will stand there at the desk and you will call your credit card company and they will work it out with you if you have the balance available. So that's why I think the con organizers, the con chairs, did not have the money for this to pay for the rooms. There was some sort of situation where they couldn't afford it. Otherwise, this would have been a non-issue, okay? For example, I was in Ireland in Galway and I tried to, use my bank card, my debit card actually, to put down on my room. And obviously my card says, oh no, fraud, and didn't let it go through. What I did was in Galway, in Ireland, I call my bank. I have a short conversation with them telling them that yes, I'm in Ireland. Yes, I want my card to go through. And they did it. And it took about 15 minutes. It was so easy. Maybe less than that. It was probably 5 to 10 minutes because I had the money in my account. Now, the only reason they would say, okay, we'll go through, but you don't have enough money, right? If that were to happen, that's a different situation. It was also found out that the organizers never paid for the rooms because they said their card was bricked. However, we know how that doesn't add up, right? So then they removed their card from the rooms and they were no longer, holding those rooms. And then when all of the cosplayers and the, people that were invited to the event and were told their room was comped showed up, they had to put down a card. So this doesn't add up. The con organizers are lying. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. This is something I'm an expert on, so they can kind of shove it. They're lying. They don't have the money. They don't have the balance on their card. They're lying. It does not take days. Like there's a video that I found from one of the cosplayers, and they were talking about how when they showed up at the hotel, they were told to put their car down, and then they did eventually pay for the first day or something, and then the next day they were getting the runaround from the con organizers saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna pay for it. We're gonna pay for it," but the card was bricked. But then there was the whole fashion show thing happening at the same time. So while the fashion show was happening, they were supposed to be on the phone with their bank because it was so hard to get their card fixed. This is not a hard thing to fix. It doesn't take long. So none of this adds up. They were lying. They were making some dumb lie, and I can see right through it. There was no money on the card. They were never intending to pay for it. So the fact that they dragged people along, some people stayed at the Gaylord for 3 nights thinking that they were going to get their money back at some point from the organizers. They could have gone somewhere else. And there's not a lot of hotels in the area near the Gaylord that are inexpensive. They would have had to go somewhere further away and then Uber in, and then that would still be expensive. So they were really in a bad place to try to afford this. Also, how did the card run? Oh, perfectly fine for the con organizers. The con organizers had their rooms perfectly booked, no problems, with what I'm guessing is the same card used, right? How is that possible? So now we're going to read something from Casey Renee Cosplay on Threads. And they say, "Hi friends, I made the extremely hard decision to cancel my workshop and appearance at Once Upon a Con this weekend. I arrived at 1:30 p.m. yesterday to find out that my hotel room wasn't prepaid for and that I would have to put a card on file to be able to check in. I contacted the con chair yesterday and they said they would fix this issue. That was 2 p.m. yesterday. This didn't just happen to me, but dozens of other guests, cast, and staff. By 10 p.m., many of us decided to just pay for the first night with the hopes that it would be better in the morning. With no news this morning, I made the decision for myself to switch my flight and leave today. When I asked to check out, they had to get a manager. He told me that the Gaylord has been trying to reach the con chair all night, and they have not been able to get a hold of them. Hearing this supported my decision to leave." So it's just really upsetting what happened here for Casey, because obviously this is something they were very excited to get involved in, and for them to show up and to have, the whole thing just fall to shambles is just really upsetting for the attendees too. There are attendees that were probably like, yes, I want to go to that workshop. And that was probably their number one thing they wanted to do. And it was canceled. It's just another example of how all of these workshops and events got canceled because with situations like this, where the person just shows up and they're essentially homeless, in DC. Which is really wrong to be putting someone in that situation. There's something else to bring up about this, and that's the staff's past experience with improper use of funds. And this is just so telling because the first group of staff members that were working with the con chairs, actually there was a mass exodus. All of them did leave at some point within the past couple of years, and new people were hired at some point to replace all of those staff members. But when there's a mass exodus of this, and also cosplayers, there were people that were originally on deck to be at this event that had, given up at some point and gone away. And there was a mass exodus of entertainers as well. So this is from a former staff member. I found this online. I'll keep this person anonymous. But I'll just say, despite Alina's shift from con chair to creative director, Kiri, her partner and wife, will remain as the con chair for Once Upon a Con. As a former staff member in 2024, I experienced a situation where my boss cornered me, invading my personal space in front of their partner, which was unwanted and unprovoked. During the financial crisis announcement, we learned that Kiri was a paid staff member, a fact unknown to many of the board and staff. I witnessed ticket sale revenue being used for meals, cosplayer outfits, and travel to other events, often without proper documentation. Attendees are still awaiting refunds from 2024, stemming from when the original staff talent ambassadors all departed. They've been censoring the word refund on their Discord and Facebook, and persistent inquiries result in users being blocked. The event lacked signage and badge verification, relying on an honor system without ID checks or ticket list cross-referencing. This made it easy for anyone to claim a ticket. Instead of addressing these issues, they participated in a fashion show, while staff members were left without rooms or information. The announced and sold plushies, supposedly stuck at sea, were never actually ordered, according to the plush creators. Adding to this, Elena was seen drinking directly from a bottle in public, at a panel, and the masquerade, and she was barefoot. The accumulation of these lies is finally catching up with them. Regardless of leadership, Once Upon a Con will ultimately benefit Elena and Kiri, given their ownership of the LLC. And as we see here, this staff member, they experienced a really traumatic situation they mentioned at the beginning of this note, and there's no excuse for that, and that is completely upsetting. They had their personal space invaded, and they didn't elaborate what that means, and they don't have to. The moral of the story is you shouldn't feel like that at a place of work or anywhere. And also, they do mention, things like the plushie being stuck at sea, the event lacking badge verification, which we talked about earlier. So something that's really annoying to do at a con is to sit at the front door and to check badges. However, it's necessary. And it just goes to show that the organizers didn't want to spend the time to check badges. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to go have fun. They wanted to go be in the fashion show. That's what they wanted to do, right? So next, there was a conversation that happened. So we're going to look at it together. This is a redacted conversation due to privacy concerns and safety. I've been given permission to share. This is from a former professional relationship the chairs had and an account behind the scenes. I did not remove my name for distinction of my inquiry. And so they said, wait, so they straight up told y'all they were broke? And she said, yes. They got on a call and said, Elena, blank up. After the next 2 paychecks, we are out of money. I was laid off due to lack of funds. This hotel situation happened at our media weekend. We as staff had to put our own cards down for incidentals for the cosplayers on cast so they could stay in the hotel for media weekend. My best friend was a photographer who was not paid in a timely manner. The hotel was literally calling me, emailing me, chasing me down in the hotel, asking where Elena was to pay the balance. I asked Elena for days to pay the Gaylord for us to use the venue for the promo shoot. She would make comments like, it's a business expense, or money is no object for me, or her favorite line, I don't even look at the prices on the tags. Wow. Oh my gosh. That's very telling. So there were a lot of pictures taken at the Gaylord ahead of the event for promotional purposes. And the situation where when they took all of these pictures was apparently just so busted. It looked like the staff was actually paying for the cosplayers' rooms because they were just, so embarrassed, and also like the cosplayers were contracted to be able to stay at the Gaylord for free. It's absolutely ridiculous that Elena's saying she's not looking at the con chair is saying, she's not looking at any of the price tags. Well, honey, maybe you should, because it looks like you don't have enough money. Boom. And so her favorite line being like, I don't even look at the price tags, just like kills me. It shows, girl. It shows that you don't look at the price tags because you have no idea how much money you're spending. A huge part of running a con is understanding budgeting. And I have a master's in accounting. We can talk about budgeting all day. These people should not have been putting together a con. They had no idea what they were doing, and it shows. They had no idea what they were doing. In my first video, I talked a lot about the vendor hall and the whole setup situation and how confusing it all was. Well, the confusion was setting up. This is a union operated vendor hall, and it's very specific about who can set up and break down and all of that kind of jazz. The setup was supposed to happen on Thursday, but the previous conference was running late. Well, I did find out that the only way for this to be true was that if the previous con was there about 6 hours later than they were supposed to be, and they were scheduled to be in the building until 8:30 p.m. on Thursday, and that's when like the ending the con was happening. It was like some legal tech con. We won't get into the specifics of it. It doesn't matter. But they were in the exhibit hall and they had, exhibits set up, but the exhibit hall closed at noon that day. So it's just, they were there like so much later, apparently. I don't know about all of that. If you're operating a con, it's highly possible that things will not go the way you're expecting in terms of scheduling. So all you had to do in this situation was be over communicative. Like, send out all of your emails in advance, tell everybody on Discord, make sure all your staff members know what's going on. It seemed like there was a ton of confusion just with setup, and setup should be easy. In this hotel, my husband's in a union. I know about unions here, and I also helped to organize a convention for about 4 or 5 years of my life. So I know that part of the confusion is setting up and having time to do that. You really need to make sure you have time to do that. What screwed them over here was that their staff members were showing up and didn't have rooms, and therefore it was creating a domino effect with this setup schedule. The setup didn't have to be one of the bad things about this con. It didn't have to be, but they had this domino effect happening where their staff members were just like, they had nowhere to stay. So I think that is not a Gaylord problem, that they perpetuated their own problem here. On you as a con organizer to go into the situation with a clear head and say, okay, we're late. We're not going to get into the exhibit hall on time. We're not going to send people in there without tables and without a place, because that will create chaos and it will sow, like this like bad vibe right at the beginning of the con. So you don't have people start setting up at that point, but maybe you have them put everything along the wall. Like in my first video, there's a TikToker who mentioned doing something like that, just have everybody put their stuff along the wall. So not everyone's trying to set up on tables and move tables around. You can't move the tables around. It's a union operated vendor hall, so you can't be dragging the tables and putting them up yourself. You really can't do that, and the hotel staff can't do that. It's only like the people who are in the union to set up that room. They are unionized, they do that, so you have to let them do that. The fact that this was chaos just shows that these con organizers had no idea what they were doing, and they didn't know how to communicate. And it all goes back to that. And it all goes back to the fact that the poor staff showing up and not having rooms created that domino effect, right? And right from the very beginning, it created this domino effect. And once again, they were saying that 6,000 tickets were sold. There's no way 6,000 tickets were sold. There were not 6,000 people at this event, attendees. It just, there's no way. We talked about the fashion show and how the con organizers were just, over the moon to be able to participate in this fashion show. Well, they had to pay for those outfits, right? And the con organizers were in the show and they had to pay for these thousands. The outfits were spectacular, by the way, but each piece was, a lot of money, and it could well be about $1,000+ for an outfit, well over. So they were buying all of these, really, really beautiful couture outfits. And during that exact time, during that, opening fashion show, people were showing up, and unable to have a room, that didn't have a room, and they were in a fashion show. And I have helped with cons before and conferences, and I've never seen a situation where the con organizers just are in a show all together and that's it, and they don't do any of their actual work because they're in a show. No, that doesn't fly, especially when everything's falling apart. You might say, hey, I can't do the show. I have all of this other stuff going on. I got to call the bank. My card was bricked. All these bad things are happening. They chose not to do that because they didn't care and they were never intending to pay for those rooms. So it didn't matter to them. They were like, this is a party for us and we are celebrating us. The whole event as a whole just felt like it was just to boost their ego. Also, bookstores were there. I think BAM Books was there, and they were told that there were 2 huge authors attending. And Pierce Brown of the Red Rising series, as well as Diana, I can't say her last name, but Diana of the Outlander series. So they were they were supposed to be at the event. They were telling the bookstores that these two authors will be at the event. And what I think is really silly is that they weren't at the event, and there was nothing on social media that indicated that they would ever be there. But the bookstores, brought a ton of those two authors' books with them to the event, because they thought that the authors would be there and there would be signings and things like that. And so that is what bookstores do when they go to an event like this, is they look at the authors that are going to be there and they make sure that they bring those books. Well, I think that's just very silly to lie about something about that. Those are two humongous authors in the fantasy realm, and if you're going to say that they're going to be there and you're lying and telling all the bookstores that they're going to be there, it's just very stupid. It's so shady. Like, why even lie to the bookstore? The bookstore is going to be there regardless. They want to go to the event. So why are you lying about what authors are going to be there? Next, let's talk about the whole move from Lancaster to DC. I'm seeing so many people on social media that requested a refund well within the refund time. And I think they cut off refunds around June of this year. And so many months before that, January even and before, people were requesting refunds because they said, oh, I can go to Lancaster, but I can't go to DC. Lancaster and DC are not near each other. Also, there's an extreme difference in price when it comes to hotels and travel costs from going to DC and going to Lancaster, PA. Lancaster, PA is kind of like a sleepy town in Pennsylvania. I live in Pennsylvania. I've been to Lancaster many times. It is very different than going to DC for a con. Going to DC for a con is probably out of a lot of people's budgets. It's just extremely expensive. But going to Lancaster for a con is totally doable. And I remember seeing advertisements for this convention a couple years ago, I think. And I remember seeing Lancaster and saying like, oh yeah, that's doable. I could do that. And then thank God I forgot about it. So there are so many videos of and comments about people saying that they've been trying to get a refund for months because they just couldn't go to the DC location. They could go to Lancaster, but not DC. And again, there's a Discord that attendees could join, but you can't say the word refund anywhere in the Discord. So how are you going to get your refund? You follow the steps on the Once Upon a Con website, and you email that email address, and you don't get any word back, and you're waiting for your money back. And if you paid VIP or if you paid general admission, it doesn't matter. You paid money and you didn't get anything out of it, and the con organizers are not refunding you, and that's wrong too. So there's a ton of people like that are out money too.
Today I was talking to someone who purchased Once Upon a Con tickets when the event was originally supposed to be held in Lancaster, PA, and then it got moved to being at the Gaylord, which is like the Washington DC area. Well, when the event got moved, they could no longer go because it went from being like a really short commute for them to like a 2.5 to 3 hour commute, which just wasn't feasible for them. They had bought tickets for both them and their husband, and they notified Once Upon a Con that they would no longer be able to attend the event and that they would like a refund. Now, Once Upon a Con actually responded to them and told them that they were getting a refund, and it seemed like at first they were supposed to get it like pretty immediately, because obviously it's not their fault if the location completely changes. Like, Lancaster is not near DC. Like, it's not like it could be a way worse distance, but it's definitely not where it was originally supposed to be held. So Once Upon a Con themselves acknowledged that this person should be getting a refund, and they still haven't received one. And the thing is, they've been trying to get this refund since January, and it just keeps getting put off and put off. The event has now happened, and they still have not received a refund. And like they had told me, they were like, the cost of these tickets could have paid for like a flight for them to go somewhere that they really want to go. And this just has me really worried for everybody else who needs refunded for something from the con itself.
So that is just crazy. Lancaster and DC are not really near each other, and they're also very different locations. like I said, if you're planning to go to a con in Lancaster, you are prepared to spend a certain amount of money. But if you go to DC, you're expecting to spend a lot more money to go to DC. It's just they're very, very different locations completely in my mind. Now, we'll quickly talk about the war games. There were these war games, and there was a war room, and they were supposed to do like a whole like situation, I don't know, with these games. And this was like something that all attendees were promised that they could have access to, you know, even general attendees. The people that were supposed to run the war games, they went home because they thought their room was going to be comped. So they went home. And so I think the con just ended up slapping something together for war rooms, and it was just a mess and stupid. And some people still participated in it, but it was nowhere near the quality of what they were expecting to be participating in. Just very stupid. And I mentioned this earlier, you know, this was all about ego. The whole con was just to fluff these con chairs' egos. And you can tell that this is the case because they have been misappropriating funds, allegedly, for years now, for several years at least. They don't know how to run a con fundamentally when it comes to working with a hotel and having a budget and working with your bank and knowing what to do in different situations. If you don't know and you want to run a con, all you need to do is get someone involved that knows what they're doing in that particular regard. You don't just try to do it because you think, oh, it'll be such a fun, you know, thing for me to do with my friends and we can dress up and do all this. No, just attend a con. Attend a con. If you don't want to organize it, just attend one. Don't run your own con. I don't get it. Unless you want to con people, because that's what they did. So they conned for sure. So it's obvious that they overextended purposely just for their own egos. They overextended what they could physically, mentally, what they were capable of actually doing for a con. They overextended dramatically.
Guys, darlings, wonders, I've been trying to do this post for 2 days. It is a beast because there's like so little to it, but at the same time there's a lot. So again, I am your hostess for the Once Upon a Con Tea, Chai. I am from Chai Studios Illustration. I have been doing the Northeast Con Circuit for 20 years. I have been attending them for 30 years.
So just a pause here. So this person knows how to run a con, right? They've been doing this for a very long time. Okay, we'll continue.
And I have shown my work nationally, all over the country. There was a good dozen vendors who had packed up and left on Saturday night, which for me is shocking. I'm a vendor. The only time you leave a con early is usually with permission of the con because you have sold out completely or because you want to burn that bridge. You do not pack up and leave early. It's really not accepted as con vendor etiquette. This convention collapsed in on itself because of ego. And I'm trying to tell you guys that do not be afraid of shows, but research your shows, especially in the fae community. So one of the big things that people kept saying was how excited they were for the show, how they could not wait to have these experiences. And I see that again and again with the BookTok community of them trying to find their community and trying to jump in on these brand new events. And I want to scream at you guys from the top of my lungs that this community is already here. The elder fae community has been in this area for almost 30 years. And we are ready for you. Authors, bring it. We all read. We've all read your books already. We're just waiting for you to find us.
Oh, that's just really awesome. I feel like it's good to mention that, you know, I think a lot of people are going to cons like this because they want to find community and they want to meet other people that are into the same types of things that they are. So whether that be romantasy or fantasy or whatever you're into, dragon, you know, literature, whatever it might be, you can find those people, you know, in other ways. And I think one of the hardest ways is going to a brand new con. There are other resources and groups and things, so definitely go check out This is Draw Chai Draw if you want to learn more about potential groups and things that you could join and meet people who have similar interests. So there's a lot more going on that you might not know about. For example, in my city of Pittsburgh, there's a small con every year that's been going on since the 90s. And it is called Confluence. I'm going to do a separate video about that. And it's not because it's a bad con, it's because it's a very well run, good con. There's free food, there's free drinks. The people are so nice. It's all sci-fi and fantasy. If you're into sci-fi and fantasy, it's really cool. And I just found out about it, a few years ago. I went for the first time a few years ago. And I've been going every year. And if you're a writer, it's fantastic because a lot of times they'll also have an agent there that you can pitch to. But it's also really good for readers, right? There's a room with indie authors, and also bookstores are set up, and also artists are there, and you can buy all cool things, and this is just a very little con, and it's been going on since the 90s, and it's well organized, well structured. You get to meet authors and talk to them, and there are things like this happening probably in a city close to you that you might not be aware of, and go to those small cons that have been happening for years and years and years and years, because a lot of times it's not going to be like this Once Upon a Con or A Million Lives festival. These people know what they're doing, and they have it down to a science. And also, it's just like you go to one of these things, and I don't know if it's just like sci-fi fantasy nerds, but like they're the nicest people. And so I've made so many friends going to this one conference every year. Please, you got to check it out. So, and you don't have to be a writer or an author, to go to this event. You can just be a reader. But if you're a writer, there's lots of workshops and things for you to join in on, whether it's poetry that you write or books or short stories or whatever you're into. So I'll stop talking about that. I'm going to make a separate video just about a good con to attend and what the markers of a good con are, because we do need some positivity in this space. There's just been so much happening that's negative. So I'll make a video about that at some point. But again, I also wanted to mention how the staff held together, this event. In my part 1 video, I mentioned another staff member that was working at the event. And the only reason that this even worked out was because of the staff members being there, holding the event together, right? We all have to understand that. So we talked about their ego a little bit here, but they didn't have a solid plan in place. So the whole thing just collapsed underneath them. They wanted to have their big moment in the spotlight. They wanted to do the fashion show. They wanted to do the ball. They wanted to dance. They wanted to do all these things. It was a self-serving fantasy for the con organizers. They were walking in a fashion show, ignoring everything around them, while the con was literally falling apart at the seams. And people were literally homeless in DC because of their actions. And that just goes to show what their priorities really were in that moment. And the priority was not to take care of their staff, the people that they invited, or any of that. And it's very clear.
Let's talk about Once Upon a Con.
Should we tell them the truth or should we sugarcoat it? Yeah, you're right.
So the truth is, Once Upon a Con, there were some bright moments. The event organizers were not those bright moments. Y'all, it was a nightmare. It started off as an absolute nightmare. But I will say that the way the community came together to actually bring life to this event, it was amazing. It was amazing. It just shows what fans are truly capable of. And it wasn't just the readers, also the attendees, I should say. It was also the staff, people who were being overworked. And I mean, worked so hard. There was even one person who wasn't a staff member, but pulled a staff pass around their neck and said, nope, I'm in charge of stuff now. And they were serious. They actually took charge. I want to thank you for your service. No, seriously, there were a lot of bad things. There were a lot of bad things. There are people who are owed a lot of money. Thank goodness Megan is not one of those people. I mean, we're owed money, but not to the degree that others are. But genuinely, the connections, the relationships that we made at this event were priceless. They were awesome.
So yeah, it wasn't all bad just because the staff managed to hold everything together. And I think they were being screwed over ridiculously, and they haven't received any money back, and they were putting out so much of their own money and their own funds to make this event actually work.
Primary reason, in my opinion at least, that Once Upon a Con didn't turn into A Million Lives is because from everything I've heard about A Million Lives, we had a more experienced group of staffers who were local enough to not immediately turn around and go home. The Gaylord Convention Center in DC is home to some pretty major fandom events across many different genres, and most of us who live around here work all of them, and we all know each other, and we all work well together, and we've all had experience in lots of different departments and know what to anticipate and how to fix it. And I worry what's hurting BookTok and what's going to continue hurting BookTok is that a lot of people are coming to this fandom from the outside, which in some ways is great. I love that new people are finding things that make them passionate and creative and new ways to find community with each other. But that's really ripe for people to get big dreams that just aren't realistic or obtainable.
So that was one of the staff members, that was holding everything together. And what I think is really telling about this is that they know that they were holding the event on their shoulders while they were there, and they knew what they were doing and they were experienced. And so I think having people like that at the event was the only reason that this didn't crash and burn on day one. Honestly, people like that knew what they were doing and were comfortable to take charge. That was the only reason like this didn't completely crash. And again, there is talk of litigation going around. And as soon as I hear more about that or what's happening, if authors do not get paid back today, like they were promised, I think that they're going to start looking at ways of getting their money back through small claims court, things like that. If you do want to support either the cosplayers or anybody else that might have been in a situation because of this con and lost money, there is an individual, their name is Emma with Vital Jewelry Co. This is Emma's company, and they create the cutest fantasy jewelry. And so they are creating a doubloon necklace, I believe, or pendant that they will be selling, and 75-80% of the proceeds are going to people in a fund where people who were directly impacted by this event and lost money can, I guess, apply to have part of that money back. And so Vital Jewelry Co. was there. So Emma was there with a booth and talked about how they lost a ton of money because they rely on pre-orders for their jewelry. Their jewelry is all special made in the US, and they had to put pre-orders together because they couldn't just buy 10,000 necklaces and show up or whatever. It's not something that they do. They're a very new business. The deal was that the con was supposed to help them advertise to get these pre-orders, and it was a really great idea, but it fell through because the con only posted like once about it and said they didn't do any email campaign like they promised. So they obviously got very little pre-orders for this particular necklace, and people showed up at the con saying, hey, I really want that thing, but they didn't order it. I guess they had to pre-order it at the event and they could send it later or something like that. But regardless, Vital Jewelry Co. and Emma is creating a special doubloon necklace.
Okay, hi everyone. Okay, so I'm hoping that this video makes it to everybody that watched my videos yesterday. Again, I posted all 4 parts and a recap, so if you want to go watch that, watch that. This is in regards to me designing a doubloon for everybody to purchase, so it goes back towards helping the authors and cosplayers, staff, volunteers, to help them pay for all their bills that may or may not get paid for. So if you know someone that volunteered or was an author or was a cosplayer or a panelist and they lost money because they traveled all the way there and we don't know if they're going to get refunded, send this, share this. The only way this is going to work is if we all kind of band together and like get the word out about it. I have talked to my account manager at my manufacturer, and it's in the works. A CAD is being designed as we speak. I will try and post a photo here. We'll see how good I get at TikTok editing of kind of what I'm thinking. It'll have a front and a back. It'll have the year on it. I also found words in Latin as inspiration for us all that mean defend, love, fight, and united, because that is who I believe we are as a community. And I made a little crest, and so I hope you guys all really like it, and I'm really excited to show you guys the finished CAD when it's all done, and keep you updated on the process.
Okay, so I'm going to link to Vital Jewelry Co. in this video description if you want to check out their website. I would follow them on TikTok so that you can get up to date on when this jewelry will be released, and also get all the details like how much will be going to this fund. And just to mention again, Emma from Vital Jewelry Co. was at the convention, is also out a ton of money. They lost money on this con. And this is just a really cool way that you can support the community that was there, also get some really cute piece of jewelry out of it. But I myself will be ordering one of these as soon as I can. I think it's such a cute idea, and I'd like to support in any type of way I can. The more I research this, the more I hear about it. It's just, I will hopefully one day be an author myself. I've been writing, and one day I'll be an author, and God forbid if I was in this situation and I was out thousands of dollars, you can't really afford to be out that money. You need to take that money, you need to put it back to your next book. Like you can't just have thousands of dollars in limbo. And we have authors right now that have all of that money in limbo, and it's just not fair. In all, there's just a ton of people who have a lot of enthusiasm for the fantasy genre, and they want to put together an event like this because they think that they can do it. Possibly, maybe they think they can. It takes some amount of delusion to do a lot of things. You have to be delusional to make a YouTube video and expect anybody will watch it. You also have to be delusional to make TikTok videos. You have to have a certain level of delusion to write a novel and one day finish it. I think delusion is helpful in some ways, but when you're putting together an event, you can't be full on Delulu. You need help from people who know what they're doing, and you have to create a network of people, not just your friends. You need to really go out there and find people who have put together a con before and get them on your team, pay them well, put them in charge of things, listen to them, take their feedback. And that's how you run a good con, is just by surrounding yourself with people who know what they're doing. If you really want to get involved and want to learn, help with an existing con first. Like, go be a staff member at an existing con and, swallow your ego, do what you got to do, and be there on the ground floor at a con, helping visitors and helping guests and doing what you got to do, because you have to learn how to do this, how to run an event. The only way you learn how to do is by volunteering and by being a staff person, in my mind, and helping to organize a convention. In my past life, I worked in an industry where I volunteered for a very large regional conference, and I did about 5 cons, and I was a volunteer member, and I was on the ground floor, helping people go to where they needed to go, putting up signage, running, a raffle table, helping organize panels, being on panels. And so I think that what's really silly is that, how do you expect to put together an event like this if you've never been involved in one? And none of these people have been involved in conferences or cons like this at a high level, even, or a low level. They haven't even been staff at them. As far as I know, they have no experience. And they just think that they can put together a humongous convention at a very expensive resort hotel. I think that's delusion, but not good delusion. There are just so many things you wouldn't even consider or think about that's so important to a convention, and it's just insane. And so if you're not surrounding yourself with the right people who know what they're doing, you're just going to crash and burn. You're going to be on one of these videos, guys. So don't do it. If you want to learn, if you want to one day run your own convention, go ahead and be mentored by someone who knows how to do this. And you can go online, you can put yourself out there and say that you're interested in learning, and you're going to have to volunteer for a bit. You can't just go straight into being the queen of the convention. You have to start somewhere, and you have to learn. I just think it's crazy that people are just jumping into these things and thinking that they can be, in charge of one without having any idea how to run one. And also to consider, this one last note, is that there's a lot of money to be had, a lot of money to be gained in this fantasy space. There's merchandise, there's vendors, there's all these things to buy, there's the amazing outfits, there's events and balls that people will pay a lot of money to attend, you know. And so I think that when people hear money, they start hearing the alarm bells, and then they're like, oh, this is something I can do. I can get involved in this. This is how I can make money. This is how I can make a living. This is easy. I can figure this out. And really, it's not easy. So I think people are getting involved in this because they think they're going to just like make money off of it. A lot of events may, in the first several years, you know, you're going to break even, and you got to be ready for that. And I think these people just wanted to make money, and they wanted to spend the money, and they wanted to make a party for themselves. And that's what they did. They had a party for themselves, but now they're dealing with the repercussions from that. So yeah, and wherever there's money to be made, you're going to find grifters and people trying to get that money. So, and that's just what you have. It's just the reality. And with that, thank you so much for watching this video. If you're interested and you haven't watched part 1 yet, definitely go back to part 1 and watch it, because a lot of this context will come together. But I would really appreciate you if you want to subscribe, if you want to like this video, if you enjoyed it. I'm a very new YouTuber, so any support is so appreciated and very welcome. And I appreciate you if you leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about the video. What are your thoughts on this whole situation? Are you afraid to go to a book event? You know, like, are you reconsidering going to that convention that's brand new that you heard about on Instagram? I think now people are a lot more hesitant. I know I am, even though these events look like so much fun on the surface. There's just so many of these events that are going wrong. And especially as an author, what do you think? If you're an author and you want to go to conventions, what do you do now, you know, to vet that conference and convention? Like, what do you do? And what are your thoughts about going to brand new first time conventions like this one? Will you ever consider doing it again? You know, let us know. But thank you so much, everyone. And I'll see you in the next one.